Hey, everybody, welcome aboard. Believe it or not, it is time to break down the 2022 IHSA state final games in Class 1A through Class 4A. In this edition of the Third and Leng podcast, we also need to congratulate and welcome in a new state champion that was crowned last Friday. Hey, everybody, EDGYTIM here, along with the man, the myth, the legend, Matt Leng. Hello, sir.
How we doing, guys? How we doing? It's good to be here. This is what we've worked hard for. Now we're ready to go, man. Big games, big games.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So as I mentioned, we're certainly going to break down 1A through 4A. We're going to talk about the the 8-man state championship games last Friday night. And again, we will also get into your what do you call them? Your four quarters, Matt Lang's four quarters and overtime. We'll get into that as well. So again, looking forward to a very busy weekend. Now, first of all, before we get in the 8-man final, let's talk about the setup Friday and Saturday down at the University of Illinois Memorial Stadium. 1A is 10 o'clock Friday. 2A is at 1 o'clock on Friday. 3A is at 4 o'clock on Friday. And 4A will be 7 o'clock on Friday. Again, all games at Memorial Stadium. I believe the ticket price is $15. Does that sound right?
Yep.
I believe so. That's what it is. So it's a one ticket all day. You can get there for 1A, stay all the way through 4A if you'd like for the one price for $15. And again, Matt, you looked at the weather. We just did that before we came on the air here. And I've seen a lot worse. Hell, I was in a lot worse last weekend. So I will take 50s and maybe a chance of rain on Saturday, which isn't great, but still I'll take the 50-some degrees over 20 any day.
Yeah, and I just, it's kind of weird, we think about like with DeKalb, and you think about the coldness because it's closer to Lake Michigan and just being north and what have you. It's been really interesting the last two times we've been up there that it really hasn't been real windy at times. There's been some times where it's been really just kind of calm and what have you.
Yep.
But then the wind will pick up with Champaign and Memorial Stadium, the massiveness of that stadium, and then with Assembly Hall or State Farm Center in the background, and the South Farms, and the aroma from South Farms. Sometimes you'll get that wind
it's unique.
Pick up, and it's very unique. And I think that could be something that we look into in terms of the weather. I think we're going to have really good weather. It's been great today, considering we had a real bad cold flash here. But it'll be really interesting to see kind of how that unfolds with special teams. We've talked about this before, time and time again. A big play, sudden change, momentum usually happens with special teams.
Well, and again, you look at the results from the semifinal rounds, and I don't know, did you feel the weather had impact on games? I certainly thought it did up here further north.
Well, yeah, I think yes, it did. It's the big pink elephant in the room. It was cold, it was windy. If you talk to the 2A coaches, especially Mr. Jostis down there at Maroa, he will flat out tell you that they were not able to get their quick passing game going.
Yeah.
And that cold weather, Josh Roop would tell you, it totally fit into what they wanted to do. In terms of the Camp Point situation, again, kind of maybe had a feeling maybe that could happen, but it wasn't for sure. And then Camp Point, once they kind of exposed and imposed their will on Ridgeville was not able really to do what they want to do. And I think weather it's a mental block. I think, I think that kind of what happened in 1A and 2A. And then 3A, I think, was just so cold up there at IC. I think it had an impact. And then obviously 4A, we had some special things happen in 4A also.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And even you look at 3A with Williamsville, a 12-7 win to advance.
Yep.
You're used to them putting up a lot more points than 12 points in a game. And I give the Bullets and Coach Coons a lot of credit. They found a way to get it either way, despite the weather. But I definitely think weather, I'm sure, had an impact there. And Matt, Saturday night, I covered the game that was on live TV on Marquee Network, Mount Carmel at St. Rita in 7A.
I watched it. I watched you weather through that. Excuse the pun. You looked extremely
Frozen.
bubbled up and
I was
battling
frozen.
the elements.
I was absolutely frozen, but the point that Mount Carmel relied pretty heavily, you mentioned that short passing game, and they had a very effective short medium passing game, which was strange. The first half didn't get it going, and it seemed like, first of all, the winds died down a little bit, and I think eventually just the Mount Carmel kids got used to it and were able to move the ball. But yeah, no doubt about it, the weather had the impact. But Matt, again, and we've said this, I've said this many times, and I'm sure you have as well. You get into November, you got to have a running game. I don't care what you do offensively. You're going to get those days. You're going to get those days with the 30, 40 mile an hour swirling winds and cold and rain and sleet and everything else. And you've got to be able to adjust and adapt. Otherwise, you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to stay literally stuck where you're at and not be able to advance. And that's easier said than done.
Well, with the Williamsville game, we'll talk more about that later. But I mean, I was 7-0 at halftime, and Toulon Unity just really could not get into their flow what they want to do. They've been a steamroller ever since week one. Williamsville's defense, I think, is one of the big stories going into a 3A game against IC. They really just flexed their muscles in the second half. Hamilton's team couldn't get going. But when it comes to that running game, we're going to talk about some running backs and some great matchups with just powerhouse running programs in 1A, 2A, and 3A.
Well, let's dig into, before we get into 1A through 4A, we need to congratulate the Illinois 8-man champions. West Central gets the win Friday night out at Monmouth College, 44-36, in a game that I know you were watching very closely. I was over in Springfield covering the Leonard Bowl, but fill us in and just give us your recap a little bit about the 8-man state title.
Well, just again, thanks to Jordan Hopman, and hopefully we can have him on the show, eventually down the road. But, he's been a big insight and a big, information source for us. The championship game was outstanding for the second year in a row. It looked like West Central was going to run away with it early. They were up 20 points. But in the second half, Amboy, who will be the perennial favorite probably next year because they're going to have everybody coming back. They clawed their way back in the game. They got within one score. Caden Drosty had another great, outstanding game. Huge carries for the ED. Finished with over 180 yards, 3 touchdowns. But his pick 6 before the end of the half was really kind of the thing that kind of, took them to the next level. Huge plays from Amboy, number 85, Brennan Blaine. He had 7 catches for about 90 yards, 2 touchdowns. And they kept the Amboy Clippers within reach. But ultimately, the clock, the weather, West Central's running game was just a little bit too much for them to overcome, and the Heat took home the championship 44-36. Both teams are going to be back next year. I think the Heat, Jason Kirby, they're going to lose a lot of guys, but they got some young talent coming up. Both teams will have about between 30 and 40 kids out for football. Just moving on a little bit to kind of wrap things up, if you want to, on the 8-man. Just some players to watch next year for 2023. Amboy has a 6'2", 205-pound tight end, Brennan Blaine. We talked about him. Cole Pemble from Blue Ridge. I think it's Riley Couture from Cambridge. The Leighton Miller kid from Decatur will be back. He is going to be a senior next year. That's hard to believe. Martinsville has a kid by the name of Victor Herrera. Pawnee has a player by the name of Carson Ward. And then, Polo, obviously Polo just continue to be great. They got a kid by the name of Carson Ward. Some of the coaches that we don't really talk about, we've talked about a few of them, Jason Kirby, Jordan Hopman at Decatur. But, Nate Watson over at St. Thomas More. They're probably going to have a really good football team next year. Scott Payne and Amboy. Blue Ridge, a team that I used to play when I was at Fisher, and we pretty much had our way with them. They're a good, scrappy, salty little 8-man football program. Matt Schubert runs that program over there. Pat Elder at Cambridge, Jason Roble at Milledgeville, Kit Thien. I'd like to throw a shout out to Kit Thien. Here he is at Pawnee, and the year I took my Fisher Bunnies down to Pawnee, and they end up beating us. Kit was running, 11-man football, but he was running foot to foot, coming right at you with, ground and pound game. Now he just does it with 8 guys. And so Pawnee's going to be good. Ted Alston at Polo, and then Buddy Brown at South Fork. So those are some coaches that you need to know about for next year. Yep. They've all had 11-man experience. They just to kind of take the big pink elephant out of the room, we're just taking a few players off the field. It's now 8 against 8. You got 16 guys out there instead of 22. It's smash mouth football. As you can see, you can have some low scoring games, you can have some high scoring games. But ball is ball. To steal a phrase from Pat Elder. Congratulations on everybody and all the communities, and we look forward to covering that next year.
Well, and again, I think one of the interesting parts about the 8-man world, and which we're going to continue to delve into and cover, is how much is it going to grow from this year to next year, and that is something that I think everyone's going to keep an eye on. Certainly, the smaller 1A, 2A schools want to see how many schools are jumping ship and how many schools are going to move over to 8-man and continue. And then eventually, I think we're going to get to the point, Matt, where you might see schools start jumping out of 8-man and going back to full tackle if they're able to get their numbers up. So again, I think it's going to be a very interesting kind of ongoing storyline with 8-man. The growth and then where the growth is coming from, I think, is just as interesting as who they are versus what part of the state are they coming from. Because right now, you can kind of see on a map where you're getting different pockets where things are going to continue to grow. And it's going to be interesting to see if we see maybe more Central Illinois teams get into the mix. Maybe more up in the northwest corner again. And then what about Southern Illinois? Are we going to start to see a larger contingent? Maybe there is enough to form a conference down in Southern Illinois. It could very well happen. And I'm sure the 8-man folks, if they're able to get 6, 7, 8 teams together out of that one Southern Illinois region, you might be able to add that and roll. So it's going to be really interesting to follow. And as you mentioned, we're going to get a few coaches on, and we're going to stay on that as well in the off season. So excellent.
I think there's rumors circulating. There could be maybe 4 or 5 new teams joining. I think, something to consider or think about is with that Southern bracket or Southern teams. Again, this is out of our wheelhouse because we don't know. It's like you said,
right.
It's the wild, wild west, and that's why we kind of like it. It's intriguing. It's kind of like the XFL.
Yeah.
But hey, will there be another site for the games to be played at besides Monmouth? If you get more teams in the South, may you rotate it.
Yeah.
I will tell you this: from the pictures and the videos and all the coverage I got,
look great.
Monmouth College, they rock the house, man. They rock the house.
Yeah, it looked great. Really good turnout. And again, it was a cold night that Friday. We were out at Sacred Heart Griffin, and I'll be honest with you, and I know the TV didn't show it. SHG side was a little more than half full, and that has been it's more than just an SHG deal. It is a statewide deal. When this weather snapped, Matt, home attendance has been way down the last couple of rounds. And again, I get it. 20 degrees, but streaming continues to have an impact on the crowds. Again, we'll get into this probably in the off season, but it's something I think we at least need to address and recognize the fact that streaming is becoming more and more popular, and I think it's impacting the gate, which impacts the atmosphere to the game. So we'll continue to deal with that.
Yeah.
All right. No. Let's move on. Let's break down 1A. So again, in Class 1A, let's take a look at it. The state semifinal round. Lena Winslow gets the second win in a row, second win this season over Forston. They get a 38-16 win to advance to the state championship game. And as we mentioned earlier, they will play Camp Point Central. Camp Point gets a 44-8 win over Colfax. So again, setting up for Friday, 10 a.m. kickoff at Memorial Stadium in Champaign. Lena Winslow versus Camp Point Central. Matt, just your overall thoughts on the 1A state title game, and Phil, what do you think is going to go down here? What are maybe a handful of the key storylines we need to watch out for in the 1A game?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that I called it, but I kind of had a feeling maybe Camp Point maybe would sneak in, but I was just kind of taking a stab at the dark there and throwing darts, But from everything I've heard, and talking to Coach Aarons, talking to the coaches at Ridgeview, I mean, Camp Point's for real. I mean, they have a very good football team. When you go into the state championship game and it's 26-0, that's some good football. Rick Aaron, let's just talk about him real quick. He's 231-66 in his time at Lena, which started back in 1997. They've never finished second place, which means they have 5 state titles under Coach Aaron. Brad Dixon, he's 111-24 at Camp Point. They have one runner-up finish to another NUIC team. That was Forreston, and then 2018 they got beat pretty handily in that game, 44-6. He's also the track coach, and so they've incorporated and emphasized the weight room and getting faster in the spring. The top 3 guys for Camp Point Central, Isaac Genenbacher, he's 6'3", 200 pounds, all-stater, leading rusher. He can catch the ball out of the wing back and tailback spots. Owen Roth is an honorable mention, all-stater. He's a two-way starting offensive lineman, 6'2", 250 pounds. Ross Riley and Connor Griffin. I mean, here you got thunder and lightning in the backfield with those 2 fullbacks. They're almost identical with their stats. Ross is probably the more powerful guy. He's 6'1", 200, 180, and Connor has more speed. Both have about 130 yards and 130 carries and 750 yards. So it's a very balanced attack.
Yeah.
They also, too, I think an X factor in this game is they have 2 tight ends that are both about 6'4", 200 pounds. They can block well. They can run. They can catch. Defensively, Elijah Genenbacher is the sophomore brother of Isaac. He's an honorable mention all-stater. He's the leading tackler with 140 tackles. He's the middle linebacker. Caden Niekamp, he's a freshman defensive lineman, 90 tackles. And then Isaac Genenbacher is that all-stater on offense, but he does a great job on defense. I've talked to Brad. He makes no bones about it. They're going to have to put some drives together, because if they don't put drives together and they give the ball back to Lena Winslow, it's going to be a tough day. They can't go 3 and out and then give the ball back to the Almighty Giant, because the Almighty Giant, and we'll talk more about this later, they've been there, done that, and they will grind out yards. Some are saying this could be even a better Lena Winslow team. And defensively, they're going to have to make Lena Winslow earn everything they can get. They cannot give up big plays. And again, knock on wood, I've seen this time and time again. These teams, 1A, 2A, 3A, they'll put 9 people in the box and they'll go cover 2 over the top, and they'll send someone right up the middle on 2nd and 1, and a guy catches it going down for a touchdown. The band's playing and it's not yours, and it's a sudden momentum breaker. And Lena does that better than anybody, because they run the ball with jet sweep, with trap, with buck sweep, with power, down kick, and then they just lull you to sleep. But their physicality, you just wonder if that's going to be too much for Camp Point. But Camp Point, talking to Rick Aarons, he told me, he's like, you really can't tell on film how fast they are. He's like, but they're awfully quick and they execute really, really well. So again, when you talk about Lena, again, it's just this team of Gunnar Lowville and Gage Dunker running back.
Right. You know what they're going to do. I mean, you look at their stats, and it kind of cracks me up. They've rushed for almost 4,500 yards this year. They've thrown for 312, and that says it all. And they've held their opponents total under 1,000 yards rushing offense this year. So, you better come up with some really creative ways to attempt to slow down this Lena offense and find a way to maybe dent that defense. But and again, and even though it's a run offense, so look at the balance. That's what's really impressive. I mean, you've got three guys in that offense, all 1,000 yards or more, and you don't have one real dominant rusher out of that pack. And again, I mean, it just gives you that it truly takes full advantage of that triple option. It allows you just the be able to spread the wealth and to keep you honest and just either, everyone always, okay, you got to take the fullback first. Okay. Yeah, you do that. But the wings are obviously just as capable as a fullback play here. And again, it's a dangerous team, Matt. There's no doubt about it.
I'll just say this, Henry Ingles, that all-stater for Lena Winslow, he's 6'3", 250. They run right behind him. They've had those guys every year, from Ian Keel to, Jennings Dunker. They just continue to churn out these big guys. And one thing is, man, I mean, if you look at this, if you look at the game that they played the one year where it was close against Tuscola, Tuscola was in that game because they jumped on an errant fumble botch by Lena. But at the same time, Lena's been great with special teams. They blocked a big punt against Forest, and you cannot make mistakes against Lena Winslow, because if you do, you really are you're playing with fire. You're going to get burnt. They're so good. They're so physical. You have to play a physical game. And like you said, you use the C word. You got to be really creative when you play this team, because you're not going to get very many opportunities to have the ball. And when you do it, you better hold on to it. You better not fumble it, and you better execute.
Yeah, again, it's to me, it's always fun to watch Lena and watch the line play. That's what I always enjoy watching, because, again, obvious size. I mean, you've got the Angle at 6'3", 255, and then you've got the junior center, Odin, who's 6'2", 276. So you got some kids with some size up front, and then the rest of them are just probably just technically as sound as they come, and just to watch them get off the ball and see their leverage. And
just a side note too, they're all really smart too. Angle's a scholar, all-stater. They're all very high in their class rank. So it's not just a bunch of, pig suey up front with a bunch of dum-dums. I mean, these guys they can execute it. And, what can you say? Lena has it rolling. I think it's going to be an interesting game. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So did you pick this as your state title game?
I picked Ridgeview to be in the state title. I picked Ridgeview I thought they had the manpower. So again, here a team beats Ridgeview. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I mean, it's gonna take a special effort from Camp Point to beat them.
Yeah, I had 2 out of 4 in the Final Four. I had Camp Point Central, and obviously I had Lena as well. I had Lena beating Ottawa Marquette, who obviously didn't get there, and I had Tuscola winning and advancing. So again, I agree. So is that your pick in 1A? Let's do it that way. We'll do it per class. So who's your choice? Or are you going to wait till Go ahead.
Well, if you want to go with the picks right now, I'm gonna stick with the upset pick. I'm gonna go with Camp Point.
I'm not ruining your.
I'm gonna look like a genius.
I'm not ruining your 4 quarters, am I, by doing this?
Oh no, not
okay.
at all. All right. But hey, listen. I mean, if they can run the ball effectively and limit how much Lena has the ball, they'll have a chance. They're going to have to play a perfect game. I picked Ridgeview earlier in the year. I'm just going to stick with the team that beat Ridgeview, and I'm going to go with Camp Point.
All right. Sounds good. And by the way, if you hear any noise, it's my dog upstairs going nuts. So, goofy dog. All right. Let's move on to Class 2A. And again, the results from the semifinals. Tri-Valley gets a 36-6 win over Aurora Forsyth. So Tri-Valley advances. They will take on Decatur St. Teresa, who gets a 39-15 win over Johnston City. And there you go. So the 2A state championship game will be played Friday at 1 o'clock at Memorial Stadium. Tri-Valley versus Decatur St. Teresa. And Matt, just I know you've talked about both teams quite a bit. And all of a sudden, Matt just disappeared off my screen. So we'll see what happened there. Someone's got a bad connection here. I don't think it's me, but okay. Well, we seem to have lost Matt Leng. We'll see if we can get him back here in a minute. But again, we continue on here for a couple of minutes and try to get Matt back. And again, as I mentioned, all the games Friday and Saturday at Memorial Stadium in Champaign. The 2A game will be a 1 o'clock kickoff. Again, as Tri-Valley takes on Decatur, St. Teresa. Let's see. Matt's trying to get back in. Oh, there he is.
There you are. Something happened.
Well,
Technology.
did you hit something wrong, or did your internet just drop?
I have no idea what's going
All right.
on, but we're back.
We're good. All right. 2A, sir, your thoughts.
Hey, well, I think it's a great matchup. Mark Ramsey, he's a legendary coach. He's 179-63 at Central A&M with a state title and 4 runner-ups. He's now 69-7 at Decatur. I think his trump card is, defense coordinator Britt Miller. Britt has done a great job with his defensive team. He's a Decatur guy. He's played almost every position when he was there at Eisenhower. He was on Coley Weller's staff at Monticello when they won the state title in 2018. And that game, obviously we know that was a legendary atmosphere. So again, some ironic twists and turns and some correlations on that. And now he looks to bring another state title back to Decatur with this group at St. Teresa Athletes. Josh Roop, a guy I have a lot of respect for. I know a lot of people over there in the Tri-Valley District. 125-40 at Tri-Valley with a state title in 2015 and the runner-up in 2013. And not bad for a school who has only had football since 2002. They were once a part of that powerhouse co-op with Leroy back in the day. And the runner-up trophy in 2000 was a nail-biter. It was a 28-21 loss to none other than Lena Winslow. So St. T and Tri-Valley met in a 2018 quarterfinals. So these two coaches are familiar with each other. Something a little bit about Tri-Valley I think is really interesting. Their 2 losses were to 1A semifinalist Ridgeview, and then in week 9 they lost to El Paso. It was kind of a turning point in their season. They got back to bare bones. They got back to running the football. They got back to kind of just being nasty, hard-nosed Tri-Valley football, what Josh does best. So Blake Renegold is just an incredible player. Andy Knox, last name Knox, might sound interesting. His dad is Sam Knox. He is a quarterback. He did not play last year. So they have some interesting guys up front. Josh will tell you Josh Joseph will tell you when he watched that game film, he was worried and concerned going into the game with the physicality that Tri-Valley had. I think it speaks credit and volumes about the HOIC conference. Tri-Valley, I think, is playing their best football right now. I think the 2A game is going to be one of the best state championship games all weekend long. I can't wait to watch it. And I'll talk more about this in the 4 quarters in terms of 2 polar opposite coaching demeanors with Mark Ramsey and Josh Roop. I really can't wait for the game.
Yeah, it definitely looks. Again, I love when you get those polar opposite kind of styles and matchups, and that one looks good. Who did you end up picking in 2A? I was terrible. I'm absolutely terrible in 2A.
In 2A, I mean, I think along with everybody, I was hoping it was going to be Maroa and the Macon County Super Bowl. I thought it was going to be the Macon County Super Bowl, and I thought Maroa, with everything they showed in their physicality and beating us, and then beating Williamsville, I thought they were going to be the state champ. I think in this game right here, I mean, it really is a pick 'em. I think St. Teresa is probably the best football team in 2A, but I think the best football team playing right now is Tri-Valley. Yeah. And I would not be surprised if they win this game. It really is a 50-50. I'm going to go with Tri-Valley, just because of that running game. I mean, this one-man show, this Eddie George type of player, this soft-spoken kid, Blake Renegold, is just amazing. And right now, he's running behind a really tough, hard-nosed, gritty offensive line.
Yeah, it's I'll go opposite of you. I'll fade you a little bit. I'll go St. Teresa to get the win. But you're right. I'm looking forward to seeing this game for sure on Friday. And again, just the matchup alone brings a ton of intrigue here for the game. And again, weather supposed to be solid, supposed to be 50. Yep. More of a chance of rain, it looks like, on Saturday than Friday. So I think the small enrollment classes, it should be okay weather-wise. So I think that obviously is going to favor St. Teresa a little bit, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it will, because they have the athletes. They're going to do some things. They can throw the ball down the field a little bit. I will say this, ever since week 9. I mean, last year was a very different year for Tri-Valley football. They went into the shotgun and they ran things with zone lead and reach and RPOs and all that stuff. And that offense coordinator and some of that staff went down to Jerseyville and took new jobs. Josh is still in the gun, but it's 100% run. They have not thrown the ball very much here recently. And the bottom line is they have a one horse they're giving the ball to, and they're very physical up front. So it'll be really interesting. I think it's going to be a great game.
Yeah. All right, moving on to Class 3A, the results in the semifinal round. Immaculate Conception, IC Catholic Prep. The Knights, a 35-0 win over Byron. And Matt, that was one of the scores that definitely caught my eye for sure on Saturday. And the other side in the Southern bracket in Class 3A, Williamsville, the Bullets hang on, get a 12-7 win over Tolono Unity. So Williamsville getting back into the 3A state title game. And yeah, Matt, that score, that Immaculate Conception Byron score, that really caught my attention because, again, obviously Byron, all the respect in the world and how they play. Obviously IC caught him on the right day. And again, I think that tells us a lot too about just how strong this Immaculate Conception team is. So your thoughts on 3A?
Well, Bill Kraft is 109-24 in his time at IC Catholic that started back in 2012. He's won 3 state titles. The football team in general has won 5 state titles under 3 different head coaches. Who can forget that 2018, that snuck into the playoffs at 5-4 and went all the way to win the state title in 2A. Interestingly enough, there's only been 2 head coaches in the Williamsville school history. Aaron Coons has been the head coach in 2003, and he's compiled a 168-48 record. He had a runner-up in 2014, and 2019 was that battle, where he won against Byron up there, DeKalb 46-42 winner. The runner-up was a slugfest with Wilmington in 2014. They wound up 20-17 on the last-second field goal. Williamsville, they've won 10 or more games, 10 out of the last 12 years. Talking to Jeff Boyer, flat out said it's just a different animal. With IC, they're RPO, they're very fast. They have great sideline to sideline, speed. Here I am trying to sound like Mel Kiper. Their sideline to sideline speed is great, but their leverage and their strength up front really makes the difference because they're strong. They control the trenches. KJ Parker, Dennis Mandela, Denzel Gibson, Joey Galeata. He's a running back linebacker. On defense, Sutton is a great linebacker. Isaiah Gonzalez is good. The one thing, though, Parker, Gibson, and Galata on defense will run you down.
See, that's one of the matchups in this ball game that I think people need to watch really close is Williamsville's passing game and their receivers versus the secondary from IC because those, and again, it's I think 3 of the 4 are two-way players, and you mentioned KJ Parker and Gelada, again, who was really more strictly defense up until the postseason, and then all of a sudden they brought him in at running back, and of course he just takes off and puts up some huge games. But yeah, that secondary is really good, and if you're a Williamsville fan, if you can find it, go watch the Wheaton St. Francis game that IC played them in week 9. I've got some video highlights as well. And that's probably as close to the style of offense that Williamsville is going to run versus what St. Francis did. Sure. And again, it was a very hard-hitting, intense game. But what stood out to me was how IC's defense and their secondary in particular. And, oh, by the way, Matt Bowen coaches the secondary at IC, so they're going to be well prepared. To me, that's this game, is the matchup. How well can IC slow down those receivers, maybe knock them off their routes, knock off their timing, and make Williamsville do things they don't want to do on offense? To me, that's the big matchup.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Williamsville has 23 seniors. Their offense has scored a lot of points because they've been balanced between the run and throwing the football. Defensively, they're excellent. Offensively, things run behind Jake Seaman. He's the 6 foot, 175-pound quarterback. 84 completions with over 2,500 yards, 33 touchdowns, 6 interceptions.
His numbers are just stupid. So
yeah, stupid good. And he's
amazing. Yeah.
And he passes the litmus test. I mean, he has the swag about him. I will say this though, that, I mean, sometimes if he does get hit, or sometimes if he starts off a little slow, it kind of has an impact. We thought we could do that, but man, he's a quick striker with the ball. He runs the ball really good. He's had over, if I get my stats here, he's had rushed over 160 times for 800 yards, 15 touchdowns. He's the all-time passing touchdown leader for touchdown and yards. Ethan Hines is a wide receiver that's really good. Jackson Workman is a wide receiver that's really good. And then I think maybe the X factor is this Jacob Finley. He's a 6'9", 290-pound offensive tackle that's just really led the way defensively. I don't know. I think they have Warren Saps at their tackles, and then I think they have J.J. Watts at their defensive ends. But their J.J. Watts have a little bit of Axl Rose to them. They're very slippery, and they got the dance moves, man. And I know that sounds weird, but they are skinny and fast, and they really get after it. Colin Ripperda is a linebacker. Sam McCoy, Nolan Bates, and John Lehman. I think it's just going to be really interesting. Can they run down IC and some of that RPO stuff? Because it's going to be athlete against athlete, and who can tackle well in space. I think that's the key to the game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm really intrigued by the 3A game as well. And it's funny because talked to Derek Paris from Channel 1450 the other day and just did a quick podcast hit and gave him my thoughts about IC Catholic Prep. And, he kind of like, well, everybody's predicting Williamsville to get blown out. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't call it that. First of all, as we talked about, the weather's going to be favorable. I think it's going to be favorable towards Williamsville in this game. And again, it's high school football. Anything can happen. I mean, especially when you have the capability and you have a kid like Seaman that just creates and can beat you either way, can beat you with his feet, beat you with his arm. You get rolling offensively and you put up a quick score or two. And sometimes, most of the time, that's a positive, unless you're the Leonard Bowl and you get a 28-0 lead, and then your dad decides, let's get things going, and comes back and fires off in a ridiculous amount of points. But in most other games, Matt, you get off to that quick start. I think that's going to be an absolute key for Williamsville. They have got to get off to a quick start in this ball game and set the tone.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you this, I can remember them going into that game against Byron when they won that state championship. And I think everybody thought Byron was going to come back and, they're going to flex their muscles, which they did. But Williamsville, man, they made big play after big play after big play in that game. And they just kind of stuck around. And that's what they're going to have to do in this game right here, because, pound for pound, IC is just a very, very explosive football team. Again, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in space with the offense of IC versus the defense of Williamsville. And can Jake Seaman make some plays? I think Aaron Coons is a great coach. I think he'll have his guys ready. But I think IC is going to be a little bit too tough in this game.
Yeah, I know. I'm picking IC as well. And ironically though, Matt, I look back at my bracket. I did pick Williamsville to win this. so I guess I should stick with that, huh? That's what I went with on playoff pairing night. So either way, I say this every year. I'm rooting for the best game. Whoever wins, it's great. I literally have no horse in the races whatsoever. I just want to see a great game, and hopefully.
I wanted to go right down the wire. I think athletically, I think they match up great with one another. I mean, Williamsville will do formations and stuff that we haven't seen. I mean, he is very creative, and I'll say this. I'll put a plug towards Aaron Coons. I mean, he has the Taj Mahal down there, and you'd think this guy would walk around with his nose stuck up in the air. He was amazing to me. I mean, I got a hold of him, I think yesterday. He sent me back a report. Thank you, Coach Coons. I mean, this guy is amazing.
You called him yesterday?
Oh, man. Hey, and not only that, but I will tell you this. Hey, listen, not only that, 2 days ago, not only that, he was very nice to my son before the game and after the game.
Awesome.
Going down on one knee to give my son a handshake because I want my son to meet other coaches. And so shout out to you, Coach Coons.
That's awesome. No doubt. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
All right. So let's move to Class 4A. This will be the game where Matt Leng will be warming up somewhere and probably getting a bite to eat and a beverage, an adult beverage somewhere, I'm sure. This is a Class 4A state title game. And again, we'll go over the results. The semifinal results in Class 4A. Providence Catholic, the Celtics, well, the team no one thought would do much. Here they are in the state final game. They get a 17-14 win over St. Francis to advance. And Sacred Heart Griffin, again, a game that I was at last Friday night, trailed 28-0 early to Rochester. They were able to stabilize the ship, and next thing you know, they come roaring back and end up scoring 35 unanswered points and get a 56-42 win. So the Cinderella, I wouldn't call it a Cinderella story, but the feel-good story of the year, Matt, for sure, is the final run here for Ken Leonard. He gets to the state title game. He will be coaching. By the way, there were some missed reports on this. This will be game number 499 for Ken Leonard. And again, trying to finish out that storied Hall of Fame career with a win in the state title game against Providence Catholic, a team that Sacred Heart has faced before in the postseason. And Matt, like your thoughts on 4A, and again, it's two almost polar opposite matchups here. A first-year head coach versus a Hall of Fame head coach on his last year. Yet, in some regards, two programs that know the state playoffs and have had a history of a lot of success.
Well, again, we figured we'd be talking about Ken Leonard somehow, some way, whether he end up losing or if he end up winning. Well, here he is, and we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about him for a little bit. He has been the only head football coach for Springfield Griffith, now Sacred Heart Griffith, since 1984, and he's 386-72 in that time. He was 32-9 at Gridley for an overall record of 418-81 in his career. But the icing on the cake, EDGYTIM, would be if he could walk out of Memorial Stadium on Saturday night with one last state title. Coach Leonard has never won a 4A state title, although he does have 5 state titles and 4 runner-ups. And the last time SHG and Providence met in a title game was in 1995, where his son was quarterback and Derek was a sophomore. And Providence won that game 22-17. So the last time the two teams met in the playoffs were in 2008 semifinals, where SHG was on its way to its Class 6A title that year. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, you have a new coach in Tyler Plants setting the tone, going to a state title game in his first year as he takes over for Coach Mark. You have to help me pronounce the name there, Coach. Coglanese, and he becomes just the third head coach in Providence Catholic history.
Amazing. That alone is amazing.
Since 1968, they've had 3 coaches. Providence is making its 14th state title appearance, and were once considered the kings. And I'm talking the kings of Class 4A, and I will talk about that later in Lang's 4 quarters. Providence football program's overall record from 1968 to 2022 is 415-188.
Yeah.
And this will definitely be the battle of 2 storied programs, with one looking for its final state title and one coach looking for his first state title. It's going to be a great atmosphere on Friday night.
It's an interesting ball game, and Providence, we've talked about, as you all know from my work on WJL here in the Joliet area, we cover Providence extensively. Every game there's someone different steps up and contributes and has a big game. It's been that way all year. Lucas Proudfoot is a kid, their starting quarterback, that has probably made the biggest strides and improvements. And again, there's been a lot of that this year, because when Tyler took over the program from Cogs, there were maybe a handful of returning starters back, Matt, and everyone else was green. So that staff really had their work cut out for them to get them up to speed and to get them going. And, Lucas was a returning starter, had mixed success as a junior, came back and hung in there. That was not given the job. He had to go earn a job in the summer. And to watch his progression has been fantastic. again, really nice kid that works really hard. He goes to quarterback camps, and you see him with his quarterback trainer, and kid puts all the effort and all the work in, and to see it pay off. And that's how this team is. And again, I go back to Derek Paris talking about Providence, and he's like, well, what is it about this team? What's the key? And I said, the key is they do everything well. They all three phases, they're very solid. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They don't do a lot of dumb stuff. Penalties are at minimum. And if you make a mistake, they'll make you pay. And that it sounds easy, but it's easier said than done. But that is how they've won games all season long. Even special teams, they've blocked kicks, they've blocked punts, they've returned kicks for touchdowns. Every single phase of their game is solid. Now, the big question going into this is, how are they going to be able to contain Sacred Heart for 4 quarters? I don't know if anyone can. I don't know anyone really has this year for 4 quarters. Okay, Waterloo. Whatever, the Battle of Waterloo, it'll be known for Sacred Heart forever and ever. Obviously there were some weird parts of that with Kenny Leonard not being able to coach in that game, and you give Waterloo all the credit in the world. Matt, maybe that was the body blow that the Sacred Heart team needed, but I guess what would encourage me as a Providence fan, I see how they gave up the run for a 28-0 Rochester lead in the first part of that game. And if I'm Providence, I'm thinking, wow, I'm getting my running game going, because if they couldn't stop, God love him, Reese, the quarterback from Rochester, basically, and Derek talked about it, basically a nose tackle playing running back, but that young man is a baller. And the fact that they were able to run the ball pretty consistently well against Sacred Heart, that's, if I'm Providence, I have to attack that. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think the thing with Providence is, can they kind of ugly up this game? Because
I think that's exactly what they want to do.
They have to ugly it up. And
100%.
I will say this: you have to tip your hat off to Sacred Heart Griffith. Here's this team that in Coach Ken's last year has been the predominant favorites, and they faced some adversity at Waterloo. They faced some adversity Friday night.
Yeah.
And they overcame that. And they, as coaches said on the radio and on television, don't give up, just keep playing. Things are going to be fine.
Yep.
And then obviously their athleticism and just being a better team. I think they were just a better team, and they were just able to kind of take care of maybe a deficiency and flaw in Rochester. And that was, we've probably seen better Rochester defensive teams, and they just exposed some of those weaknesses. I think it's going to go right down to the end. I think it's going to be an interesting game. Will Sacred Heart's athleticism maybe be too much at certain times of the game, or will this steady Eddie, Providence team that, let's face it, they started the season off with a couple of losses. They've really are playing their best football at the greatest time of the year, and so they've gotten better and better and better. Like you said, they're absolutely fundamentally sound in all 3 phases. It's going to go right down to the wire. I'm going to go with the fairy tale ending. I'm going to go with Coach Leonard. It's going to be a great game.
Yeah, same here. And again, I know Providence very well. They're in my backyard, and they'll probably be trying to burn me out of my house after I make this pick. But I'm with you. I just have a feeling Kenny Leonard and Sacred Heart gets it done. I think another important part about the Sacred Heart team that some people realize, Sacred Heart people do, but Providence people probably don't. This is a senior class that has had a ton of success in that school, and not just football. They won a basketball state title last year. Keyshawn Singleton and Jake Hamilton were big parts of that basketball championship, and they're winners, and they've been winners, and they've been in those big moments, and they've delivered, and they haven't blinked. And and I love the fact that they got to the state title last year and fell to Joliet Catholic, and this is a incredibly experienced team. I think I heard 17 or 18 returning starters back from last year. So this team, as you mentioned, everyone's expected big things, obviously, and added pressure of Kenny Leonard's season. That being said, I agree with you. I think Providence is going to ugly up this game, and they are gonna make it living hell for Sacred Heart to pull this thing off. In the end, Matt, I just think they find a way to get it done, and Ken Leonard goes off into the sunset with another state title under his belt and go live the rest of his life and enjoy his life.
Should be a lot of fun. It's going to be caps off a great evening.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, I think it's time we need to get to your four quarters, huh?
Well, let's try to jam it in here. We got about 10 minutes left. I'll try not to ramble too much.
Yeah, wow. Okay. All right, so let's go. So the theme for this week's four quarters and overtime, Matt, are superheroes. So let's start in Class 1A. You have 1A, The Incredible Hulk versus Iron Man.
Well, I always think sometimes, like in our small school football, we forget about some of the prominent names in 1A football and just in smaller schools. And, with the Incredible Hulk, you always had David Banner as the Hulk. Iron Man was Tony Stark. So here you go. You have the Incredible Hulk and Rick Aaron's against Iron Man and Brad Dixon. The Incredible Hulk, their strengths. His strengths is his durability, his outstanding strength. And when he gets angry, he gets better. And I think with Lena, they shine when the light's on them the biggest. And when they are in a state championship game, they really shine. It's going to be really interesting. There's no magic required with the Incredible Hulk. It's they're pure stubborn to a fault. Lena is, they're just so strong that they do what they do. Iron Man, on the other hand, Brad Dixon, great strength, great reflexes. He flies around in the air. He's kind of unique. Camp Point is unique. They're another team out of the West that's going to try to beat the perennial giant in the North. I think it's great. You have the Incredible Hulk against Iron Man, two powers going right at it. 13-0, 13-0. Someone's going to lose.
All right, in Class 2A, you have Superman versus Lex Luthor.
So I just think with Superman, you have Mark Ramsey, the stoic, historic, great face, demeanor, going against Lex Luthor and Josh Roop. Not saying that Lex Luthor and Josh Roop are the villain, but in this one, Superman, they have the speed. They can fly around. He has the X-ray vision, but they've got great speed on the back end. I mean, their defensive backs and their running backs and their skill guys are awesome. Their quarterback is good. They got powerful running backs. Tri-Valley, like Lex Luthor, just an ordinary person. No really natural superpowers, but I will just say this in terms of Josh Roop. He has great intelligence. He is situational football. I think he's really, really good. And let's face it, Lex Luthor is a mental block to Superman. If this team can muddy it up and ugly it up like teams have done the last few years, St. T will lose. Okay. This team has really, really rallied since week 9. They've established their power running game. I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see two contrasting styles. You got this short kind of, bulldog of a guy in Lex Luthor and Josh Roop going against the historic, legendary Mark Ramsey.
All right, in Class 3A, see, I think you're making up a superhero here. So let's get into this a little bit. In Class 3A, The Flash versus Captain Cold. Where's Captain Cold from?
Well,
you made that up, didn't you?
But I did not make that up. I looked him up. Thank you very much. And I did not look him up through Wikipedia. Like I tell my students, don't ever look anything up through Wikipedia. Bottom line is The Flash. Okay, so you talk about Williamsville. This is this fast, athletic team that has been there on the turf. They've shown that they can, excel in big games. They play fast. They're extremely sideline to sideline, really good defensively. They can hit. They process information at kind of at the speed of light. That's the whole thing with Flash. And Aaron's done a great job. Here's the thing on Captain Cold, and he is a character, by the way. There was a sign at IC that was on their locker room before they played Byron, and it said, "Revenge is best served ice cold." And what they meant by that was they wanted to recover and send a message to everybody. They sent a message to Princeton. They made a statement to the whole state with their win over Byron. So what is next? You have Captain Cold and Flash. You have kind of two similar teams. hot versus cold, who's going to win, who's going to make tackles in open space.
Yep.
Going to be a great game.
Yeah. And then finally in Class 4A, Spider-Man versus Green Goblin. Gee, I wonder who the Green Goblin is.
Okay, so here we go. If you're going to give Kenny Leonard, a title, he really is what a superhero is all about. And although many have followed in his footsteps, he is still the number one guy in the state. Spider-Man, Ken Leonard, he works down there because he has undersized, street smart kids and savvy teams. And, they're kind of like this underdog because they're fighting for Kenny, and they have this heart of gold, and they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They want to do it for the team. They want to do it for the school. They want to do it for the town. They want to do it for Kenny Leonard. And Tyler Plants is, if you had to talk about the Green Goblin, kind of the nemesis, for Spider-Man, it's kind of their insanity. I mean, look at what Providence has done. They've come out of nowhere, but they've done it with great teaching, great coaching, and great playmaking with their speed, strength, endurance, and tradition. They will not be scared of Sacred Heart Griffith. They have just as much tradition, and they are the true villain down here in the state, because I can tell you, I think there's a lot of people in that area up in Champaign and Springfield that want to see Kenny Leonard win this game. But I can remember where I was at when Providence and Coach Sefner brought his teams against Pat Ryan over there at Redbird, over there at Hancock Stadium. Everybody couldn't believe that Pat Ryan was there with Metamora 2 years in a row. Couldn't quite get it done. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but it's going to go right down the wire. It's going to be a white knuckling experience. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I agree. Again, I'm really intrigued. Again, my 3 and 4 in particular to me are really, really intriguing on Friday. So, and then finally overtime, Matt, your master class in Superhero 101.
Well, again, thanks for letting me be kind of goofy and stuff with the superhero stuff,
Kinda.
But, here's how I look at it, Superhero 101, high school athletics, there is a correlation between this, between superhero and athletes, I think we all believe in the greater good, there's a model of kind of coping with adversity. Our athletes are going to do that. There's going to be a lot of adversity on Friday,
Yeah.
Our superheroes deal with adversity, whatever. I don't want to get too weird here, but, they're going to find there's going to be a meaning. There's going to be some sort of connection with a win or a loss, and they're going to discover their strengths and weaknesses and play the best that they can, and, why do we like superheroes? Why do we kind of maybe live vicariously through our student athletes? Because, all these guys they're just doing stuff that we admire. They have qualities that we admire. They overcome challenges and they stand up for others. And I think Friday is going to be a great night, a great day. And I'm looking forward to some sort of normalcy. We're back. We're going to have a wonderful weather.
Yep.
And we're not wearing masks. We're just playing football, and I love it. And I'm glad I've been able to talk about it.
Yeah, I hope we get good crowds. That's what I'm hoping for. I hope we have a good showing. And again, what's going to be interesting before we wrap up is, by the way, if you ever stop being goofy, you'll never be back doing this podcast ever again. So the moment Goofy's not allowed, then that's the moment we shut this thing down. So
shut it down.
So
we'll ride off in the sunset, Kenny, and we'll
Goofy is highly encouraged. Okay. So, but what I hope for is we see good crowds, and one thing to remember, this is the last year of the contract. So I'm been talking about this. I fully expect to get some rumblings this weekend from, obviously there's a big gathering of coaches in IHSA, and someone's going to talk, Matt. Something's going to sneak out a little bit. And especially in my opinion, if I don't hear that Illinois is going to host, if we don't hear anything this weekend, then I can almost guarantee you it's not going to be in Champaign. Because if Champaign was the winner, I cannot fathom them not wanting to get that out this weekend. That's my theory. So,
yeah.
All right. That'll do.
Either way, it's going to be great. Four great games, and just a wonderful atmosphere. So looking forward to it.
So we'll be back next week. We'll have a wrap, maybe a guest, maybe 2. We'll see how things go. But Matt, that'll do it. So for myself, for Matt Leng, everybody have a great Thanksgiving. By the way, we didn't even mention Thanksgiving because we're busy with football. But have a great Thanksgiving. We'll see you down in Champaign on Friday. and Saturday. If you're bored, come on down Saturday. I'll be there as well. And have a great Thanksgiving. Thanks, everybody.